Good morning, everyone. This is Matthias Chang from Future Fast Forward once again. And I speak to you in my first address in 217 from my office, my inner sanctum. And I wish all of you a happy, healthy, victorious New Year. I'm sure all of you, with a long weekend, had a good rest, rejuvenate yourself, and have recharged your battery for the coming exciting new year. And hopefully, and I believe, it'll be a very victorious new year for our country and for the patriots. Why today, in this address, I'm speaking from my inner sanctum, from my office, is because I'm not conducting a counter-propaganda against the criminal cabal, the Najib regime. But today, I want to share with you some things which are so confidential, never ever heard before by Malaysians. And I want to stress that what I'm sharing with you will have an important impact on the political future of our country, more so in 2017. And because of the nature of my address this morning, the target audience of this address is not the entire country, but very specifically for all the leaders in UMNO, the MKT, Supreme Council members, the divisional leaders and the branch leaders UMNO, and the political leaders of the opposition parties and the leading activists outside of the opposition parties who are actively helping and assisting the opposition parties. Why I've confined this address to this very narrow audience is because if they don't understand the significance of what I'm about to disclose, this country will be beyond redemption. And I say so seriously and deliberately. Let me sum up the future scenarios in the coming year and why I say so. I can only see three scenarios in 217. If there is an election, and if the opposition alliance were to win in that election, this country will have a narrow window to rectify mistakes, move forward, and then hopefully usher a new era of prosperity and peace. But it's a very narrow window of opportunity. On the other hand, which I feel most likely, the regime, the Najib regime, the criminal cabal, will not be confident enough to hold an election. They will find ways and means to avoid the election. Second scenario. The outcome of that scenario, second scenario, will be dire for Malaysia. Whether it will last a year or 2 years, or another term of Najib, regardless of the length of time, that will be the beginning of a downward slope with no opportunity of returning to status quo. The third scenario will be, which will result from the second scenario, is that because of the deepening crisis in our country, what will happen will be this country will suffer the consequence of a cleansing fire. Because only a cleansing fire in that dire situation, even though at the risk of destruction in the entire country, will this country wake up and realize what they have lost, what they could have achieved, and the mistakes they made because of their myopic approach to the problems of our country, and because they failed to put the country first, but more importantly, they failed to uphold the principle of utamakan Allah, to put God first. So this is the basic introduction of my address to you, okay? The broad picture. But underlying this broad picture is something very significant, which very few people, especially the entire Malay leadership in this country, fail to recognize or chose not to recognize. They are in a state of denial. In all the years, I have the privilege to be called a crony, bastard, barking dog, and the most profane word, mother F, insulting my mother, by the critics of Tun Mahathir Mohamad. Let me say to those enemies of Tun Mahathir and myself, which is irrelevant, immaterial, I'm very proud to be called a barking dog, a crony, a bastard, for and on behalf of Tun Mahathir. Because I'd rather be called a barking dog, a crony, for Tun Mahathir, than a barking dog, a crony, a zombie of a criminal leader, or a member of a criminal cabal. Let me say this to you, to these leaders, more so the Malay leaders, and to my Chinese friends. You are so lucky, the Malay community of this country, to have a leader such as Tun Mahathir Mohamad. If you're objective, and you're a sort of history, and you evaluate all the Prime Minister up to and until Tun Mahathir Mohamad, you will realize no other Prime Minister can come near to what Tun Mahathir has achieved for this country, and how his legacy, in particular, his intellectual legacy, will have an impact for the future of Malaysia long after all of us has gone out of the stage of world affairs into oblivion. And I say this in all seriousness. because my loyalty is not based on a person, but based on principle and the cause. Why I'm saying this is because many supporters, even of Tun Mahathir, have failed to recognize and appreciate the accomplishment, the achievement of this great leader. And the failure of all these leaders came about as a result of the huge strategic mistake of the Pak La administration from October 2003 onwards. Because if you look carefully at this situation, you will realize that Pak La and Najib suffers from an intellectual disease, an impairment, the impairment of intellectual dishonesty and inferiority. They have a complex, an inferiority complex. And as a result of that insecurity, of that complex, that intellectual handicap, they went about together with the entourage, their so-called intellectual supporters in the person of Khairi Jamaluddin and the 4-4 boys, and now the advisors to Najib, that in order to enhance their so-called leadership, they went out of their way to destroy, or they attempt to destroy, the legacy of Tun Mahathir and his achievement. And when Najib deviously took over power from Pak La and being part of the Pak La's administration and sharing the same disease of intellectual inferiority, went along the same path. That is why, since 2003, Malaysia has gone down the slippery road towards failure, disaster, stagnation, and there's no turning back. Pak La and Najib has done more than anyone else to destroy this country. And history will judge them for that huge strategic mistake, because they put their ego, their pride, their arrogance above the country and above God. They got their priority all wrong because they lack the intellectual, moral honesty to examine themselves, their own weaknesses. But instead, they arrogate themselves a capacity beyond the imagination. That's why all the lies and all the propaganda. What do I have to say to support my thesis or my contention? Very simple. How many of you know, even those who have worked with Tun Mahathir in his cabinet, that Tun Mahathir is an intellectual giant? And let me now take this opportunity to share with you some very intimate moments that I had with Tun Mahathir, and why I say what I'm saying this morning. I don't have time to go into much details, but I will pick certain incidents and share that with you. This address being the first of 3 parts, addresses focusing on Tun Mahathir and why I say his legacy will save this country. All right? When I first went to his office to be formally introduced and to be interviewed by Tun Mahathir, what struck me sitting in front of him was the bookshelf behind him, as well later his private library. And I saw those books behind in the bookshelf. And I was stunned, I was amazed, I was so happy, because I could recognize those were very books that I have read and enjoyed for a long period of time. And when I worked with him, subsequently as political secretary, I knew that I was in the midst of a giant, an intellectual giant. Because, like I said in my previous address, thinking, analyzing is a very difficult task. It demands discipline, dedication, and perseverance. And unlike any other leaders that I know, right now in the cabinet or in Patla's cabinet, Tun Mahathir does not speak without first arming himself with knowledge. It will come as a surprise to many people that when Mahathir speaks, he could speak in simple English or simple in Bahasa Melayu, and not cloud arguments or points with some academic jargons. Because any intellectual, genuine intellectual will tell you that if you can simplify complex ideas and principles in simple English, then you know the essence of what you're talking about. And this is the hallmark of Tun Mahathir's thinking, speaking, and writing skills. And to the extent of his discipline and his demand for highest quality, you can ask all his previous aides how often Tun Mahathir spent time writing a speech on important topics. As much as 7 drafts, each draft in his own handwriting on a pad. After each draft is sent to be edited by his aides for fact-checking, send it back to him, he redraft again and redraft again and redraft again until he's satisfied. And in that process, for any reason, if the teleprompter is not working or the script is lost, I can assure you, he can speak off the cuff on that subject. No other leaders have that skill or that expertise or that intellectual honesty that you write and speak what you know from the heart and from the mind. He always exercises his mind before he's opened his gap. This is a very important factor you must bear in mind. Because as you know, in my previous address to you, way back last year, I've told a lot of leaders, zip up, shut up, close the gap before you speak. And I've given you illustrations over and over again, that kind of bullshit, horseshit, and crap that comes out of the mouth of so many ministers. Just recall all of them, okay? Why? Because these scumbags, these idiots, never exercise their brains, if they have one, or whatever they have, they've never exercised the brains to think about it, to do research, study, write it out, think through what they've written out, improve the draft, improve again and improve again until it's crystal clear. This is what's the most important lesson one can learn sitting with Tun Mahathir, observing him, how he works. And therefore, I can say with pride that it is a privilege and an honor to work with Tun Mahathir Mohamad and for him. And let me share with you. In the course of my working with Tun Mahathir, my mother told me, continue to serve him and learn from him until he doesn't need you. And even if my mother has not exhorted me to do that on my own volition, I will do that. And I will give an arm and a leg to learn from this guru, this Sifu. As an aside, let me tell you a story. When I proposed, and I keep on pressing Tun Mahathir to write his memoirs, he was not sure that it could be done. I could assemble a team. I approached many people. To cut the story short, a lot of them said, oh yes, I will help you, Matthias, to be part of the team, but I need to be paid a salary to do the research for Tun Mahathir, to help him prepare the materials for his memoir. I was shocked. But I kept to myself my shock and my disgust. Because if I was in the position, these young people, I would give my arm and leg to be at the feet of this guru, to learn at the proximity, close and personal, politics, economics, finance, political science. And yet with numbskulls, going to other universities, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, whatever you, to study political science from professors who are not involved in politics, who has never managed and lead a party, for that matter, a government. And they come back with some degrees, BSc, bloody screw up, MSc, master screw ups, PhD of political science, phony donkeys of political science. And of course, we have one young punk who was the leader of Fourth Boy Boys. And everyone was saying, oh my God, this guy is a graduate with political science. He must be very clever. But when you have Tun Mahathir right in front of him, and his father-in-law, they can't recognize this fact. And they look at a piece of paper, a certificate from some stupid, idiotic professor. Can you learn anything from a professor on political science when that person has no experience, practical experience in political science, save as some books? Think about that. Think about that. And think, finally, could Mahathir survive as the leader, prime minister for 22 years if he was not a master, an expert in political science? In every sense of the word. So we'll ask everyone, listen to the address. And I've received a lot of stupid, idiotic comments about Tun Mahathir. Shut up! Zip up! Have the humility to exercise your brains first before you critique Tun Mahathir. I wanted to make this comment to some of my own relatives who talk cock bullshit, who has not been in government, not exposed to government policies or in a party. They pontificate, make judgments. How idiotic. You think Tun Mahathir can survive 22 years as Prime Minister if he was a wishy-washy politician? If he was intellectually disciplined and strong? Let me say to you, from the time of independence till now, no Chinese, No Indian leaders can match him at all. And I would like to tell all the Chinese and all the Indians, have the humility. Don't be chauvinist anymore. You can't come near Tun Mahathir. Cannot come near. And I work with Tun Mahathir, so I know for a fact, and I've dealt with a lot of Chinese and Indian leaders of all shades, of all religious background and divide. They can't come near. At all. At all. And I've seen Tun Mahathir dealing with foreign leaders. The confidence and the command of the subject matter. Even foreign leaders look up to him. Yet our scumbags, Malay leaders in UMNO, having worked for him for 22 years, they are so stupid, so intellectually bankrupt. It's like putting pearls before the swine. They can't even see there was a treasure right in front of them. They have the arrogance to scorn, to make stupid remarks about a leader which no community in Malaysia has produced, save the Malay community. And yet the scumbag Malays try to bring him down, talk bad about him, scorn him. You freaking assholes, wake up. Because by your action, by your demeanor, by your filthy words, you have insulted your own race. You cut your nose to spite your face. For the Chinese and Indians, when you criticize Tun Mahathir without basis or a subjective approach, likewise, you have insulted your own community because, but for him, our country would not be where it is today. Think about that. I touched on the first issue, this intellectual honesty and discipline. You tell me, which leader can do that? But of course, there were some of leaders who think they're more intellectual than Mahathir, more visionary than Mahathir. Name one of them, whether on the BN side or the opposition. Take Musa Hitam, Deputy Prime Minister, former. Pak La, Prime Minister. Najib, Kit Siang, Anwar. I think all of them together, while they were in government with Tun Mahathir, or while they were in opposition opposing Mahathir, ask yourself, in the entire 22 years, have they come out with specific policies, a vision, plan, agenda that would alleviate Malaysia to the present status? Oh, they talk in generalities. Reformasi, reform the government, reform the country. Where? What? How? Very general, no specifics. Likewise, Pak La and Najib. Transformacy. Transform what? How? Where? Nothing. If they were real, sincere leaders, whether in government or out of government, why did not publish detailed vision, detailed plans, strategy, tactics, policies to improve? None whatsoever. None. And yet, they dare challenge Tun Mahathir's intellectual superiority and leadership. Nothing. Nothing, I'm telling you. I remember after the opposition won the 5 states in the 12th election, and they had power. I won't mention name. Some of those people told me when they met me, Matthias, my God, it's so difficult to be in power, to be in government. When we were in opposition, it's so easy. All you do is throw stones at you and the government. One batu. If it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, we make noise. We don't really have to plan too much. We critic. Then they realize it's not so easy to govern. Some says, I ask them, what are you going to do for Selangor, for Penang? One of them says, ICT. We're going to develop ICT. So I told them, Tun Mahathir pioneered ICT in Malaysia, the multimedia super corridor, and other things as well. Look at Najib. He says he has done so much for the country, so much achievements. What has he done? The mass transit, LRT, is merely an extension, an expansion. The idea came from Mahathir first. Mass transport, LRT. What he did was really extend it, nothing original, nothing new. He then out to build a tallest building in Malaysia. But not the world, Najib. The tallest building was first built by Mahathir, Twin Towers, overshadowing every other building in the world. And even when the Twin Towers was overtaken by the one in Taiwan and in Doha, the Twin Towers still remain as the tallest Twin Tower in the world. Numbskull, understand, Najib? No one remembers the second person in the moon, the second fastest person in the race, 100 meters race, or the freestyle. But everyone remained the first. What else have you got? What else have you achieved? Nothing. Nothing. And all those people who criticize Tun Mahathir, Musa Hitam, and others, when you left government, what blueprint do you come up with? And as a deputy prime minister with no significant contribution, your comfort tunship. What a scandal. Can you see now? This disconnect with the opposition leaders, another sickness. Because why? They have the same DNA as UMNO leaders now. Entitlement as of right. So you have a leader in opposition who just assert that as of right he must be the prime minister. As of right. By virtue he was a former deputy prime minister. But if you look under the microscope, the plans, the vision, reformasi, reform what? Be very specific. Don't talk in generalities. Recently, Kit Siang says, if and when Harapan comes to power, the prime minister will be Wan Azizah, deputy Muhyiddin. How freaking cocked up is that? Counting chickens before they hatch. Is that a strategy? Is that what the country wants from these leaders? Yes, I'm very harsh on them. You may not like it. You may say, by criticizing the opposition leaders, we may contribute to the defeat of the opposition. If this is what you want, Malaysia, then you deserve the crap, the rubbish. Because that is not a solution as presented by Kip Tsiang or as peddled by Wak Azizah. That the struggle is to ensure Anwar be the Prime Minister. On this side of the equation, the UMNO equation, the struggle is to ensure the continued premiership of Najib. You see, both sides are so hang up in some cock and bull political agenda. The survival, the self-interest of two individuals as opposed to the larger picture. Pause here. Tun Mahathir will be 92 years old. He has more resilience, more discipline, more energy than a 30-year-old activist in UMNO Youth or whatever youth organization in the country. He stands tall today. Why? Because he has the intellectual honesty, the moral honesty, and the capacity to know where he has made mistakes, how he can turn things around and still serve the country and put the country first. Because he could, like all of you activists out there who refuse to make sacrifices for the country and for God, and give the excuse, I have a family, I have choo-choo. He has a family too. He has choo-choos, grandchildren. But he still put the country first and still struggle for the country. And let me say to the opposition leaders right now, stop your nonsense. None of you can lead, be the Senate bearer for this country except Tun Mahathir. You can scold and say I'm a crony by saying that. But let me tell you, this country will go to the dogs if you forget the achievements, the legacy, and the future contribution of Tun Mahathir. Under his leadership, let me say to you, there will be a chance for this country to turn around, revived, and God willing, achieve more victories. And Tun Mahathir need not be the Prime Minister. The mere presence and the command by which his intellect can show the way. And if we follow diligently that path, we will succeed. To the Malays, please, I'm telling you, you are the majority. You are the majority. The Chinese can play a part, but only a small part. Whether this country will survive and achieve more victories will depend on you. And if you, the Malay leaders in UMNO, in PAS, in Amanah, in PKR, in whatever other parties, Perkasa, whatever, if you turn your back on Tun Mahathir, you deserved to be the dustbin of history. You deserve to be scorned, and this country will be another Syria. Not my words, because we will be ripe for division, for sectarian warfare. You will be the cause of it. Now, let me pause here a while. Let me share with you another aspect of Tun Mahathir, which to you, even to those who has worked with him, couldn't see this. That Mahathir was and never will be a dictator. Those who accuse him to be dictator, all right, it's because intellectually they were inferior. They couldn't accept his intellectual superiority and leadership. That's why they felt that he was very imposing, because they didn't have the intellectual capacity to appreciate what he's doing. Because if you share and admire his intellectual honesty and superiority, you will not ever call Mahathir a dictator. In fact, a critical factor of his leadership is Tun's ability to establish consensus, to unite on a broad front. He led Barisan Nasional, which is a coalition of 14 parties, mixed bag of political interests, fighting, tearing each other apart. He unites them. And right now, to the opposition leaders, if you are so good at uniting, why do you still need Tun Mahathir? Actually, to DAP leaders, don't try to be kingmakers behind the scene. Have the humility. Eat humble pie. Talk less. Listen more to wisdom. To a man who put country first, not himself anymore. Look back to 1997, financial crisis. Everyone criticized him, to the extent that even Tan Sri, Nordin Sopi, the head of ISIS, was against Mahathir. And he's the intellectual giant. But Mahathir didn't tell him off, asked him to go away, ignore him. Tun Mahathir told him, put down your objections to what I intend to do for the country, how I serve the country. Put up all your criticisms and show that I'm wrong. And Tun Mahathir took each criticism of Nordin Sopi, take them off, and overcome each and every one of them, to the extent that Nordin didn't realize how wrong he was, and they give his full support to Tun Mahathir. You recall at that time, the whole world, Soros, Harvard, everyone in the world condemned him, saying that you destroy your country. When you speak, the market collapsed. One against the whole world. How did he get the confidence? Because you wouldn't be able to have that backbone, the intellectual capability or faith that you will prevail. But Tun had that confidence because he did his homework. He could see ahead. He researched. He was willing to think out of the box. And we prevailed. We won. We won. And now, everyone praises him. Have you forgotten about that? You scumbag leaders of UMNO? Azalina, young punk, you arrogant woman, you know nothing. And you dare to get the Sharizad and Adam Skull to criticize Tun Mahathir. When you know nothing, you don't have the humility. So this is already another aspect of Tun Mahathir. A weaker person would have sold out. And don't forget, there was another leader who took the wrong path, the path of IMF, foreign subjugation. But Tun prevailed and brought us out of bankruptcy and jeopardy. Do you know, this man is so special. When I worked for him, another factor that I learned was his discipline. And that discipline is translated and personified in the manner he works. When he comes to office, many others are still not around, even to today. Alright? Exactly, on the dot, he comes to office. He works diligently, punctually. How many of you assholes in UMNO, in opposition, can do that? Be punctual. Because that is a reflection of your mind, your uncluttered mind. I'm very happy to say, when I had the honor to work for Tun Mahathir, when I saw that it was so early, I made a habit that I must be earlier than him to show that I'm learning from him. That's why I was always in the PM's office 5 minutes to 6. So that even when he comes to office, I'm there, ready and willing to serve him. I will switch on my computer. I will scan all the headlines because we are 12 hours ahead of Europe and America. The latest news, I would research, log in my brain. So even when I see Tun Mahathir in his office as Prime Minister, should he ask me anything, I'm prepared. That discipline I learned from him. To today, in Yayasan PLF, he still has this discipline. He still work a 14-hour day or even more. More. He can fly overseas and come back. Sometimes he even goes straight to office. This is another aspect you don't know. That aspect of discipline, dedication, commitment, passion, you can't find in any other leaders. So, in this first address, I'll end here and I'll give you more intimate details of Tun Mahathir and myself in future. But I hope that all these basic ingredients of success that Tun embodies and personifies will help you get a better inkling of why our country needs Tun Mahathir Mohamad more than any time in the history of our country. And before I end, I want you to bear in mind the following quotes, which will help you understand Tun Mahathir. The first one is not what you know, it's not what you don't know that kills you. It's what you know for sure that ain't true. Mark Twain. The illusion that we understand the past forces overconfidence in our ability to predict the future. Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow. The other quotation, which I bring to your attention, we can be blind to the obvious, we are also blind to our own blindness. Our comforting conviction that the world makes sense rests on a secure foundation. Our almost unlimited ability to ignore our ignorance. So please understand this quotation, why I said to you, because it reflects what I said earlier about Tun Mahathir. With that, I'd like to conclude my address and once again remind you, surrender to the will of God, to Allah, have absolute faith He will protect, defend us and guide us under all circumstances in the face of all adverse enemies. With that, I wish you a good day, Happy New Year, and I'll come to you again in a few days' time on the second part of this series on Tun Mahathir's leadership. Thank you. Bless you.